Hey guys, what's going on? This is Dr. Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com. And today we have a very popular topic that I would say is really big on the internet, and that's how to gain muscle. But in this particular episode, we're going to talk about how to gain real muscle. Because I think that we get really mixed up with a lot of people's different ideas on how to train. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll get a good idea of how to train and get real muscle that's not only looks good, makes you strong, but is also long lasting. So let's get to it. The first thing that I think we need to understand is that muscle has all different types of makeups. We have fast fibers, we have slow fibers, and we have hybrid fibers that are somewhere in between of those. Not to mention that we have a lot of things called satellite cells, Golgi tendons, and muscle spindles, which maybe we'll get to in a different video. But at the end of the day, we have muscles are not just made up of one particular type of tissue. They have all different types of contractile properties that make them able to do different types of activities. We have muscles, muscle fiber types that allow us to be explosive. We have muscle fiber types that allow us to do things for a moderate period of time, very hard. And we have things that allow us to do things for upwards of 5, 10, 15, or even if you're doing a marathon, hours of workloads. These all require different energy and different types of muscle tissue in order to adjust and accommodate the workload that's prescribed. So what's the big difference with how to train? Well, if you truly want real hypertrophy and real muscle gains, we probably don't want to ignore a lot of those different muscle types of tissues. So we need a vast array of different contractile properties in our training. So one that I think is really important is we need maximal effort type training at a certain rep range. What is that rep range, you ask? Well, I think for compound movements, we're looking at around 5 rep maxes. So if you want to squat, deadlift, and bench press, you need to get stronger in order to do submaximal weights with more weight, right? So if I can bench 500 pounds, how many times can I do 225 on the bench for? Probably a lot more than if my bench press was only 250. Well, that means that my maximal strength is going to have to rise. So I think a good mixture or range of repetitions for that development of hypertrophy and real strength muscle gains is 5 rep maxes. So if you're squatting, deadlifting, or bench pressing, or doing something of that nature that's a compound movement, 5 rep maxes are going to be your best friend, but they're not your only friend. The next friend is you need slow eccentrics. So what does this mean? This means that you need to do weight training where you have slower tempos on the way down. So 3 seconds, 5 seconds, etc. are going to be a crucial way to put on more muscle mass. But it doesn't always mean that slow eccentrics are the key and predominant way to train all the time. We need to have different mesocycles with different types of contractile properties. So there's not just necessarily one way to train, but we're going over the couple ones that I'm talking about: quality, real muscle, hypertrophy, and gain. So slow eccentrics are good for that, but make sure you don't neglect doing things with faster eccentrics in a yearly cycle. The next thing is that when you're doing your accessory movements, so like tricep push downs, bicep curls, lateral raises, etc., sometimes it's a good idea to use tempos. So tempos we just talked a little bit about on slow eccentrics, but tempos mean that you're not moving at just whatever speed you want. You have a 3 seconds up and a 3 seconds down, or upwards of a 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down repetition speed. Slowing down the actual muscle contractile properties is going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to attack the muscle a little bit more than the stretch reflex. So if I'm really blasting through an exercise as fast as I can move, much of that energy is created through stretch shortening cycle or stretch reflex, meaning that the tendon is storing energy much like a spring, and the muscle is just kind of controlling the spring and adding a little bit of tension along the way. If we slow this down, the muscle will get hit much, much harder. But it doesn't mean that we need to negate the dynamic effort method. This means moving submaximal weights at maximum velocity. So again, remember, contractile types are a huge process to putting on quality muscle tissue. The next big thing that I think we need to hit on, and we're not going to go into it too deep, is eating. I'll give you some key factors of what it took for me to get up to 310 pounds and be pretty lean and have a lot of muscle? One, I tried to eat 40 grams of protein at least every 3 hours. Doing smaller amounts in more dosages tends to help the absorption process quite a bit better than trying to only eat 2 or 3 meals a day with upwards of 100 to 200 grams of protein. It's much more stressful on the digestive system and, in my opinion, much more wasteful on the proteins that you're taking. So if we just take 40 grams about every 3 hours or 10 grams an hour, we're going to be in a high anabolic state for most of the day, helping us put on muscle both on training days and on days off. The next thing is make sure that you're eating enough carbs. Carbs spare the proteins from getting broken down too much and also give us energy to train really, really hard. So if you listen to the beginning of this video, we talked about doing 5 rep max, maximal effort exercises, doing slow eccentrics, doing dynamic effort work. All of this takes an abundance of energy, and most of which need carbohydrates to run. So you don't find a lot of people doing keto style diets that have a ton of power. They tend to be much less powerful. The next and last thing that I think we need to go over, just for baseline, is that don't miss supplements that aid in testosterone. So a lot of times people go for supplements that, give them a pump, or they might make them feel like they have more energy to train. But in reality, a lot of your supplementation should be trying to optimize 2 things. One, your testosterone level. So how do you optimize a natural testosterone level? Well, with ATP Labs, it's pretty simple. Center zinc. So if your body doesn't have a decent amount of zinc in its system, it makes it very, very hard to put in quality testosterone and actually produce testosterone. We find it here at Wenning Strength. It's one of the major limiting factors to people with low T naturally. The next thing is vitamin D. For most people, we are deficient in vitamin D because we're not out in the sunlight enough. So with vitamin D, you need to add K2 with it, and that keeps it from hardening the arteries. So taking vitamin D just by itself may not be a good idea for cardiovascular health. But low vitamin D also is a regulatory effect to making testosterone. So I hope this video helps you guys out a little bit to make in more muscle tissue. Please go visit wenningstrength.com and make sure you're training right, either with our elite online coaching or some of our highly skilled and highly adaptable manuals. Talk to you guys soon.